Hello. We will give you a little introduction to Flowgraph. What is Flowgraph? Where do we use it? And how we use it? And so on. So first of all, Flowgraph is the built-in tool that is used to control events and game logic within the levels. So it is the scripting tool. So I'll just give you a little rough introduction to Flowgraph, how it works, and so on. To find a flow graph, you have to go to Tools and Flow Graph. So this window will open up. So it's a separate window. I would prefer to work with two monitors, but if you don't have only one, it doesn't matter. So you can just minimize it and call it back again. So like this. So as you can see, we already have some flow graph containers, but I will just roughly show you how you can create a new one and then start scripting. So first of all, we'll add a AI tech point. So just place it here somewhere and then call it FG test 1, and then just go over to right mouse button, click on the tech point, and then create flow graph. And then we say it will be a new one, so we will just add a new one called test FG. So once we create a flow graph to it, you can just right click on it and then say flow graphs, and then it will right directly bring it to the flow graph container. So it's the test FG. It's the folder of the flow graph, and fgtest_1 is the entity we will use to create the flow graph. So first of all, we should just add a really quick one. So we go to game and then game start. So this is the flow node we mostly work with. So that means whenever we jump in game, this will fire up and then do all the things we want to do. So let's do this. So now I will just give you roughly a information about the flow nodes we have. So you have flow nodes for the AI, so AI segment, AI sequence. Then we have a lot of actors things like that can be used for the player itself. So we can have say a flow node that checks what happens on death, and then we can trigger something. We have kill info, kill player, and so on, right? So then we have the animation. So this is mostly used for the track view sequence. So AI play sequence, animation play sequence is the one flow node that can start a track view. So you have a lot of debug flow nodes we use for while we're developing a game. You have a dialogue and so on. So most of them are actually self-explaining, so I don't need to go into detail, but what we will do first is we'll just read the AI sequence. So I will just place an AI and then just make it move from one point to the other point, and then we'll just go forward with this. So we'll just explain more and more later on. So to get an AI sequence work, we need to, let's say, minimize this photo first, and then I will just add an AI. So it's a friendly AI with a rifle. There you go. So you can always, what you should do actually always to rename it. So that means this guy has to have a name. So we'll just call it FG AI test guy, and then go back to flow graph. So now we can add the selected entity to flow graph. We cannot do with everything with it, but there's most of the things that is in CRYENGINE can be used in Flowgraph. So alright, so now we added this guy to Flowgraph. So now we will start with a sequence. So to start this AI sequence, we definitely need AI sequence start. Right. So now we have to select this guy. You can see it in the properties that is selected, and then we need to assign it to the AI sequence flow node. So there you go. Now we can read it here. now we can connect this to the game start with the AI sequence start. We can also trigger this by entering an area trigger or proximity trigger. So, but I would just for showcase, I will add this game start and then keep doing this. So now to play an AI sequence, we need to add the move sequence. So that means we need to link it, and then also again assign the selected guy to it. And also, once this is done, we need to end a sequence, right? So we'll say this guy and at the end sequence flow node. So now this guy definitely needs a direction, a position. So what we need to do is minimize this window and then go back to create object and then add a tag point somewhere here. And we call this FG test guy TP1. So TP means tag point 1, or you can also call it post 1. Doesn't matter. Now we go back to Flowgraph and then we just right click on Flowgraph and say add selected entity. This is the tag point that has a position and rotation, so that means we'll add this position to it. And to make this guy actually not interruptible, I would just disable both flags here, so that means it will start AI sequence, do the move in speed walk and stance relaxed, and then once it's finished it will fire up the end. So to debug your Flowgraph stuff, you have to enable this toggle visual Flowgraph debugging. Now you will see actually the yellow lines once it will fire up. So now we just move this down and then we jump in game. There you go. Okay, so now in Flowgraph we will see that it triggered the end, so that means the AI movement worked. So what we can do now is we can also change the speed, so we say move should run and be in alert stance. So if you go back and do it again, we'll change it. There you go. So this is actually used for, let's say, we use it a lot of time in Crisis. So once you enter an action bubble, you see actually a lot of AI coming in, doing some stuff and so on. We used mostly Flowgraph to do that because it's a strength tool, so you can do a lot of things with it. So now I'm going to show you another example of a ego shooter. So this is how we set up the game, actually a Crisis game, for example. So first of all, we will just add lots of enemies, say up on the hill here. So I'll just rotate them and I do not duplicate. Also rename them, so it's like AB1 FG tests. Enemy 1. So just copy the name and call the other one enemy 2. So these guys, they will be hidden in game first, so that means if I jump in game I will not see them. So now what we can do is we will just draw a area shape. So we go to area and area shape. So I'll just start from here. There we go, and then I have to reset the height, give it a bit height, so like 10. not really move it down. Now if we if we press on the display field, you will see actually that's the area where the player will enter and activate this AI. So, and then they will start shooting at us. So for this shape, we'll just call it FG test shape. And for this, we also need a area trigger. So we got two legacy entities, and then the triggers, add an area trigger in. So now we call it pretty much the same as a shape, but now add an AT at the end for area trigger. So now we have to go to the area shape and then say target tools. We have to pick and then select the area shape. So once we do this, now we can take the area trigger and then add it to our flow graph. So that means, so we will just add a AI logic any and then connect this with the AI trigger. So when we enter this area trigger, we'll make these two guys visible. So that means we have to add them to the flow graph and then say enable and enable. As you can see, they're now enabled, but not alerted, so now they will start to fight us. So, I mean, later on you can put them into groups and so on, but this is just a very quick example how to set up the AI spawn and so on. Instead of adding them into the level itself, we can also add a tag point like this. I'll say FG test AI spawn 1. Now we can just say like this, and now we'll duplicate this, add this one, the second one. You'll see actually it's called FG test AI spawn 2. So now what we can do is actually we can use the positions to spawn an AI directly there. So that means we can get rid of this one. So entity spawn archetype. So an archetype we can select the there's a top down here, say enemy easy pistol, and then we can type in the name like FG test AI enemy 1. We definitely need the AI entity, the tag point entity, so that will show we can connect this to the positions and the rotations. We need to do the same for the second one. Say this guy will be named 2. We'll take the second one and the tag point and add the positions and rotations. So now once we get in, we'll spawn this guy. Actually, I would prefer to do it like this way because you don't need to place the just randomly in the map, so you can just easily have the tag point. I would also make a different color of it, so that means for AI I would use a really unique colors like I don't know, orange. Oh, now I can, if you go closer to it, you will see blue is a different thing, orange is a different thing. So this is another example of Flowgraph. So Flowgraph is also being used from the lighting artists and also from the scripted events guys. So that means they also use Flowgraph to set up their scripted events. Also for the time of day, say whenever we jump in game, and then we'll change to set the time there, and then once you enter another room, maybe we'll change the time, and then when you go back again. So now we will just do the same with another tech point. So we'll just minimize the flow graph. So we had the first tech point here. We'll just add another one. I'll just copy and duplicate this one, and as you can see, it's called already TP1 minus 1, 2. So now we'll just add this one to the Flowgraph too. So now we go back and say, once we finish this sequence, we start a new one. You can also give it a little time delay here. So now when you go to the midpoint and then say right mouse button, you can say remove, disable, add a time delay or logic any. So I will just add a time delay instead of going to all the Flowgraph nodes here and so on. So it's basically easier. Now I will say after 2 seconds, you just start a new sequence, and I'll just copy this and add here and say as a second point we should just use this tech point position, and now also we have to again add the sequence. Let's see. There you go. So what we are doing is actually mostly we do put them into like boxes. So that means we can add a comment box to it saying this is AI FG test. So this is actually really clear. So that means if we always add these boxes, we can easily debug our flow graph. So please never ever have something like that. This is just too crazy. I'm just showing it on the window. So please always create containers and boxes and so on, and then add a lot of comments to it so people know exactly what it's about. So this is a flow graph test. So this, because this is helpful for the debugging. So that means if I go to now search and I say AI FG test, search for this guy, and then enable all the includes and so on. And Flowgraph. There you go. So unfortunately it has the underscore, so that means if I search for it, it's a AI underscore FG underscore test. And now this will show me the correct comment, and now I can easily debug the stuff. So again, add a lot of comments, a lot of logs that can be found in the debug log. So this means here we can also add AI FG test, and that's sequence. So this can be used also for anything, so that means it's easy for us to debug it. So that means if I add it here like this and this, I'll say sequence 2. Now if I would get a crash while I'm playing the game, while developing the games, now I can debug easily what happened and what not, you know. So let's say if this fire's up but not this one, so that means something between here crashed the game. So I can easily go into the editor and then try to fix it. So always work with debug logs and also comments, please. So now I will go more into details of game tokens. So we're using game tokens for setting up. Well, we do use for game tokens for Flowgraph itself anyway. So game tokens can be found in node, mission, and then game token. So we have game token. That is a proper trigger. Then we have game token check multi, game token get, modify, set, and so on. So if we add this game token now, so this was actually a trigger. So that means it will compare. So when this changes, the game token change, then this will fire up or this will fire up. Right. So so to actually work with a game token, we need to set a game token. So that means we need to get a game token set. We go to tools, edit graph tokens. We can add a game token. So a new token that says AI FG ended sequence 1. So I'll just copy this and then add it, and then say also for the same one for 2. So now if I go to the game token set flow node, if I select this, I can change the token here. So now the select game token window will open up. So we can go to graph tokens and I select the AI FG ended sequence 1. Also the value needs to be false or true. So in this one we have to change it to true. And then again do the same for the mission game token. So we need to select. So now this will also open up. So we can say if AI FG ended sequence 1 is on true. So now we do have our game tokens here, and then we will add this second one. So that means we just get in here and easily work, and I say 2. Also for this one, 2. So now I will just connect this game token with the AI sequence, and so that means this is the first one. So once it will trigger this, we'll say this will set the game token to true, and the second one will do the same for AI FG ended sequence 2. So now what we can do is actually we can just use these game tokens to trigger something else. Instead of having all these lines around here, we can just easily work very clean with the game tokens, with the mission game tokens. So we just want to quickly show and then just add a, I don't know, like a little presentation. Then I will just show you what can be triggered. So that means if the ends his first sequence, we can maybe have something visually on player's hat, and then in the second one we will have a different one. So we just very quickly set this up. So if he ends the first sequence, we say we go to image, say it should, well, let's say I will just add a debug message on the display. So I'll show this and say FG reached TP1. So, and this should show up on for 2 seconds. And position doesn't matter actually, the color also. So now if they finish a second sequence, we'll say finished his second AIFG reached TP2. So now if we just minimize this and then jump in game again, so we'll see. Oh, there you go. You can see it on the top left. So now once you reach the second point, we will see another message. There you go. So with this, you can trigger a lot of things. So that means it's definitely clearer to work with the game tokens instead of having all these lines as I showed on this window here. So as you can see, this is a big mess. So please always keep your work clear and easy. As I give you information about game tokens, I will just show you how usual we are using it or how we should use it. So therefore we go to Tools, Game Database View. Now we find this game token window. So therefore we need to add a new library. It's called Mission Test. So here we can add a new item. It says Mission Objectives. I should just add an underscore all the time. Then Mission Objectives, or Mission Objective 1. So once we have done this, you will see this actually, and then we can just save it. So whenever we save a game token library, you will find it in your libs folder. So I'll just show you. So it's in game SDK, libs, game tokens, and mission tests. So this is an XML file, so that means we can also open this up in Notepad, so we'll see this. So now I will just show you what the type differences are. So we have the bool, which is only the value, which has the value of false or true. We can go for integer or numbers. So it's self-explaining. Then we have the float, which we are not really use as a level designer. We have the string. The string, we can have a string which is empty. So the value, we can always work on the value. So that means we go for active. Or we can also change the game tokens itself. So we could just go to rename item and say mission objective 1 is active. So, and I will just duplicate this one. So clone library item. I will just rename this one to completed. So let's change the values to false. Now this is actually an example. So this means for the mission activity we can keep them on bool. But now if we add a new item that says player is in area, so this means now we can have several areas in one mission. So therefore we would go for an empty value, also in string empty value. So this means first of all when we add the game token in Flowgraph, we start with area 1, and then once the player is in area 2, we can change the value to area 2 and so on. So I will just give you an example to Flowgraph. So we'll just work on this. So we open up the flow graph again, and again the same test FG. So now we'll just put in the game token, mission game token to set. So this means whenever we start the game, I will open up this window here. So now you will see actually mission test, mission objective, and we say mission objective active is on true. So this means this mission objective is now on active, right? So let's say when we complete this, we have to add the completed. I will just add as an example of an any, so that means we completed this one. Now this third mission game token, which is the player is area, so area 1. Now if we move to another area, we can change the value to 2 and so on. Area 3 and area 4. So we're using these ones, for example, specifically we use it for in Robinson. So whenever the player was in tar pit, we had again different areas in tar pit. So we set to tar pit area 1, and then tunnel and area 2 and so on. So so I would just use the game tokens, mission objective game tokens, to just roughly do a mission objective here. So therefore we have to define the areas. So I would just add a area shape that says so tight, and then let's go for this and also display. So now I'll just edit the shape. So this means this is our area 1 shape, and I will do the same for this area. So that means we have a area 2, set height, done, display. So maybe a bit more, because the areas need to be really visible. So this is then area 2 shape, and for these shapes we also need area triggers, so which can be found in legacy entities, triggers, area trigger. So we'll just call this area 1 AT, normally a trigger, and just duplicate this, add here, call it area 2 a trigger. So now we have to again link them to the shapes. There you go. So now we'll just add these ones to the Flowgraph. So just select both of them, go to Flowgraph. Now, as you can see, area 1, area 2, so that means area 1 goes into this one, and area 2 to area trigger 2. So this both will define where the player is at the moment, so we'll just move it up here. So the mission objective, I'll just use a debug message for this one. So now if So I would just add a debug display info and say player is in player area. Player is, and then use set concat As you can see, we added a start node so that we show this display message, and since we have to connect these ones, I will just add a any to here. So that means whenever player changes the areas, it will write in the display message. So that means if we are in the area 1, what says player is area 1, area 2, and so on. So I'll just really quickly show it. So this is our shape. This is the area 1. So I will just jump the game. You can read it actually on the left top. So it says areas in area. Now I'm entering area 1. So, and then once we cross the bridge, we should be in area 2. There we go. And same when we go back. Area 1 again. So now what we'll do is actually I will just have a easy mission objective. I will just have one enemy. So that means if I kill it and go to area 2, we'll have a cube that will come up here or appear. So I will just add a simple box here. So a cube, small, there we go. So this will not show until we finish our mission objective, so which is kill the enemy. So I will just make this one actually hit in game. So that means when I jump in game, it's not visible. And I will go back to the Flowgraph and say this will unhide when we complete our mission objective. So mission objective is completed when we kill an enemy. So I will just add a simple AI. So say enemy pistol. So there we go. This is our mission objective AI. So let's say boss FG test. So once we kill this guy, our mission objective will be completed. So now I'll go back to Flowgraph, and at this guy, when we so that means when this guy is dead, we'll complete the mission objective. And when this mission objective is completed, I mean you can easily do something like this, sure. But what happens if we just skip the boss and go to area 2? So in this case, what I would do is actually we would use game token check. So that means if I'll just copy paste this one here. So it is in area 2. Then for this we will have game token check. It says mission objective is completed. It's true. So in true we will unhide this. If false we will hide this again. So that means we are forcing the player to complete the mission objective for us and then get this one visible. Right? So it could be a door, it could be everything. So I just added a box, very simple example. So now to just jump in game, let me just double check. So if area is in 2, if this is completed, then we will unhide. Okay. Now I will just demonstrate how it looks like. So this is just a mission, basic mission objective. So this means we have to kill the boss, and then this little box will appear. If we don't kill it and then just rush through the over the bridge to the area 2, this will be still hidden. So now we're in area 1. We have the boss here. I will just skip it. The box is still hidden. So I will go back and now finish my mission objective. So that means I'll kill this guy. And you will also see this in Flowgraph. So that means now the mission objective 1 is completed. Now we will just walk into this area 2, and then this game token check will check if I really completed the mission objective. If yes, if true, then we will unhide the box, the cube. So let's go over. There you go. So I will give a rough example for having Flowgraph inside prefabs. So therefore we again need a Flowgraph container. Therefore we have these tech points. So I've already created a Flowgraph to it. So I will just open up. And there you go. So what we need is here a timer. So I will just add a timer. So that means when there will be an asset, when we come closer, it should just start rotate, and when we're in distance, it should stop. So this is a really quick example of having Flowgraph in prefabs. So what we'll do is actually we need a timer. The period is 0.1. It's not paused, so that means whenever we jump in game, it will already start to fire, so trigger stuff. And now what we need is actually we'll just add a basic entity. So I'll just have a cube here, so that means we can scale it down actually, like 0.25. So this means when we are close to this, it should start to rotate, right? So what I will do is now we can also copy paste this actually. So that means I will just rotate this and then do another copy of this. So that means when we stay here, both of these basic entities will start to rotate. So therefore we go to the Flowgraph again. Now we should just add these two as it's always nice to have these assets, the entities actually inside the prefab here, so we can easily just double click and select them once we need. Actually, it's again, if you just have one monitor, it's better to do this. If you have a second monitor, it's fine, because you can have Flowgraph on the other side and your perspective mode on the other side. So now We have the period here, so this means with a period we will do distance check. So this means we will go to entities in range, so 1 meter, and okay, the range should be 2, that's fine. So now as entity 1 we need the local player, so it's an actor local player. Just add this. And as entity 2, I would just use the entity ID flow node and have the tech point as its third point. So now the period will trigger the array entities in range, which will check the distance all the time, and once it's true, what we'll do is actually we will just make the entities rotate all the time. So that means we will have 2 of these. Here, the first one we'll assign in the first one, the second one, the second one. So, and both are needs to be paused. So that means we have to flag this pause. We have this entities range. So we set this up, so the player entity is the first entity and the tech point is the second entity. When both are in range, we will make these 2 entities rotate, and once we are out of the distance, it will stop. Right. So for this we need the Boolean 2. So this means we go to math and then Boolean 2. When it's false, it needs to be true. When it's false, it needs to, when it's true, it needs to be false. So this means false will unpause this rotation and true will pause it. So we need to do it opposite, unfortunately, but this is how it should work. So that means if those entities are not in range, the false will go into true, and the true will stop, it will pause this rotation, and if it's true, it will false the rotation, so these 2 entities will start to rotate. Now I could just easily go and just check. Let's just close this one. So now, as you can see, they're not rotating, but if I go closer, they start rotating. So now, once we move away, come closer, and they start rotating again. So now we will just pack these ones into a prefab. So we can just so this means we can just select all these. So the tech point includes the flow graph anyway. So, and then once we click all assets that needs to be packed into a prefab, we need to select all of them, and then right mouse button, and then say create prefab. So now it will open up the database view. So we'll say a group, let's say rotating cubes and cubes. So as you can see, this is our prefab. So now what we can do is actually we can just easily go and copy this. So that means now the flow graph is inside the prefab. So these are one asset. So this means you will not find them in the entities anymore. So they are a prefab flow graph now. So that means if I go and select this prefab and say open, now this will show up in the flow graph window too. So that means it's here. Now we'll just close this one and also duplicate this, so that means we'll just add it again and again. Now if I jump in game, they're all stopped, but now If I'm going closer, this one's moving, right? This one not. So this means now if I move to this one, this will start rotating and the other one will stop. And same for this. So we can also have a more complex stuff here, like, I mean, this is just a rough overview how it looks like in a prefab. So to also get your prefab in the right rotation, what we can do is actually we can just pick this up, pick all the assets, and then change it to volts. So that means we just rotate like, I don't know, is it one more maybe? So now close it. Now they're aligned and they look more clear. We can really go for complex stuff, like when this one starts, we can have a, I don't know, a particle effect. So that means if I want to add a new stuff to the prefab now, so I'll just open up this one. So now what I will do is actually I will just add a particle effect to it. So that means when this thing starts to rotate, we will just spawn a particle effect on the cubes. And once we're out of the distance, it should stop. So therefore we need to go to database view. So this is our database view, and here you will find all the particle effects. So for the test case, I will just use let's say a tail, right? Spark. So these spark ones, so that means they look like this. Once we disable it, they will get vanished. So this means when we're in the range, we will spawn this particle effect. So now for the reason we need to disable it, and then we need to select our prefab and say we have to pick the particle effect, so we it gets into the prefab. So this means now the particle effect itself is a part of the prefab. So to add it to the flow graph, we have to open up again and then go to flow graph. So now I will just add this here. So this means if it's false, we'll disable it. If it's true, we'll enable it. Right? So now I'll just close the flow graph and then close the prefab. And now jump in game. There you go. Out of the distance, stop. Again, stop. Enable it, stop. So the prefabs, we can really go for complex stuff like doors, gates, completely a lot of things. So can be done with a prefab within the prefabs. So now we can also duplicate this once. So that means we can have more, and whenever we work by them, right here. They work separately because all these cubes or the tech point itself has a new ID. So that means whenever we jump in game, it will always have a new ID. So this means this flow graph within the prefab work only for this prefab, and then we can also connect these ones. So that means if we can connect one prefab with another one,
Achieved with CRYENGINE.